Good morning, Brother B. Good morning to the entire Tobago Channel 5 family and all of Tobago. It's a real pleasure to be with you this morning.
Yes, and of course with Jumani Cox as well. And that name is African, eh?
Yes, so Mr. Cox, Jumani.
All right, so let's get in it. We are excited that the sand is finally here as to furnish the volleyball court. Let's talk about that and how eager you were. I heard you on a different frequency. We're worried maybe a little bit, but however, it's here finally.
Okay, great. Well, of course, I'm very pleased that the sand is finally here as we've got the facilities ready for Commonwealth Youth Games. That had been our area of a little fear, a little concern, because we missed the deadline to have the test activities and so on as promised. A part of our arrangement with the Commonwealth Games Federation was to complete all facilities and test games by a certain date. That should have been the end of June, and then we pushed to the end of July 29th. So when we were unable to have test games last week, we all became a little concerned. I received a letter from the Commonwealth Games Federation president saying that she was concerned and disappointed. So we got very worried, and I had conversation with Chief Secretary Fadia Guttin, because as you know, this is a Tobago House of Assembly project. The Commonwealth Games, the Commonwealth Youth Games volleyball was supposed to take place at Pigeon Point. As you know, what we are seeing here is 5 years of work. We started working on these games in 2018. At that point in time, Joe Pitt was Secretary of Sport in Tobago, and we had selected Pigeon Point. But the Commonwealth Youth Games allows us to make changes and to develop facilities as legacy project. And on March 4th, pretty much 5 months to the game, exactly 5 months to the game, I learned from Mr. George Leacock, who Chief Secretary Fadia Guttin appointed to be the head of the Tobago Task Force, that he had a conversation with Chief Secretary and the Assembly wished to develop this facility in Blackrock. And I said, this is a beautiful idea. This is a wonderful idea. I support this. However, I'm concerned about the time and whether we meet the deadlines, because based on the contractual arrangement, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, is the sole guarantor of these games. If something goes wrong in any part of these games, we are the sole guarantor. We have to pay for the liabilities and pretty much stand the losses. And I wanted to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to and keeping our end of the bargain as it relates to the contractual arrangement. So I'm happy that we were able to get the sand here. The Tobago House of Assembly encountered some challenges in getting the sand out of Guyana at the very last minute last week. We were all calling around trying to see how we can get the sand out quickly, whether it's reaching out to Conrad NL Ambassador in Guyana, Fadia Guttin, Chief Secretary, reaching out to his contacts in Guyana, also making sure that central government had its necessary its relevant arms in place, Port Authority, and so on, to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Over the months, Ministry of Energy granting the relevant approvals, the AMA, and so on. So it's all come together. At the end of the day, it's a team effort. I'm happy to see this facility finally being delivered. I'm really hoping that we can push to get a test event in before Friday, because the testing part is very important to the Commonwealth Games Federation. We have to remember that we're dealing with children ages 14 to 18 years old. So we want to make sure that the facility is safe and secure, and we can deliver these games to the best of our ability. We want to give our guests a good experience.
Excellent.
We're welcoming 1,000 athletes from 71 countries and 500 officials. We really want to showcase ourselves, Trinidad and Tobago, as a place to host these and to have these events. We've been making investment in facilities for decades, and we really want to showcase what Trinidad and Tobago really is about. I'm happy that we're having the games in Tobago, because when the TTOC came to me with the idea in 2018, I said, if I'm going to support this, then you have to ensure that the games take place both in Trinidad and in Tobago. So we had sent them to Tobago immediately around June of 2018 to meet with Joel Pitt then and the THA, who jumped right on board. And when this new assembly came on, we had a meeting and they came on board. You remember last year, Assemblyman Clark went to Birmingham with me, and we started showing the CGF what we have in Trinidad and Tobago, and really redoubling our efforts in and with this more commitment with games. So I'm happy to see it all pulled together. Of
Okay,
course,
Minister.
we can't celebrate just yet. Yeah.
Minister, before you continue, before we go into the other activities, because we want to put Tobago definitely on spotlight. We all know that the beach
right.
volleyball will be taking place, rugby sevens, the triathlon, fast 5 netball, and of course, so those would be the discipline, but also we have the closing ceremony taking place as well. But before we go into that, just on the topic of the final stages in this Black Rock Sport Arena, is it a situation where if there's not a practice game done before the first beach volleyball match or game, would that be a major issue? And just speak briefly to why we had to procure the sand as opposed to using sea sand, Minister.
Okay. Well, we want to have a test event. That's the protocol, that's the practice, that's the best thing to do it in the national games. It's no time to practice when it's time to actually have the game played. So even if that means over the last couple of days, we've been sitting with the Commonwealth Games Federation, the Trinidad and Tobago Games Association, what we know to be the TTOC, and the local organizing committee, and exploring different ways in getting it done, even if it means starting the games a day later in Tobago, the volleyball games a day later. That's a last resort. We are hoping that the 2 courts could be laid out between today and tomorrow, and really push to get a test event around Thursday so that we remain on schedule. Right now, based on the schedule, we have only 3 hours between the volleyball games, because volleyball is supposed to be for 5 days from August 5th. If we start later on August 6th, we would have to run games one after the other with no break in between. Of course, that would mean more work for the runners, the volunteers, the bus drivers, everybody who, as it relates to logistics. So we're hoping that we don't have to push back one day later, but there is a plan, and we really want to have a test event to make sure that the site is sound, like we've done test events at all the other locations.
Okay, fantastic. And let's shift focus now to the Shore Park. So Shore Park, the indoor facility, we understand that there was a test match for netball, the Fast 5 netball over the weekend. And we could also, while you respond to that, you could also speak to the rugby sevens as well, Minister.
Well, I'm happy that we're finally using the multipurpose complex that was built for both sport and culture. And we had meetings there over the last couple of weeks, and we looked at the layout, the wooden floors and so on. So I feel quite confident that we are ready at the Shore Park Multipurpose Complex, and that the test event over the weekend was a success. Rugby Sevens is taking place at Shore Park Recreational Ground, and as a Scarborough Sec girl, I must say I'm happy to see that ground restored to its former glory. Of course, the House of Assembly is responsible for doing the hardcore infrastructure, and we at Sport TT have been responsible for helping out with the equipment and so on. So it's a partnership. We're working hand in hand to ensure that these games are a success. And I'm confident that we will deliver. This is our first time hosting games of this nature in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, and the first time for the CGF having these games on 2 separate islands. And I think that that's what gave us the one up, or the extra point, because we won by 1 vote. I think the ability to showcase both islands and the culture and so on, as we showcased in our proposal and our presentation when I was there in 2018. So it's good to see it all come alive. And as much as plenty of the items, the activities like the opening ceremony taking place in Trinidad, a lot of the coordination is done by people like Alma Gordon and Tobago. So, and it's a lot of talent and skills coming together from both islands to make these games a success.
Excellent. Well, let's talk that. And we're talking opening and closing ceremony, except there is something else you want to touch on from a sporting standpoint. However, the opening ceremony is very, very critical, and that takes place on August 4th at the Hainsley Crawford Stadium. Let's talk about what we are going to showcase the world. What are we going to look like? A little bit on that, ma'am, and then we come to the closing in Tobago.
Right. Well, of course, we're going to showcase Trinidadian culture. We have ultimate events. responsible for the opening show, and they will be showcasing mass or music, the steel band, of course, and the different teams will be coming out. Parade, of course, there's the parade of teams, so they will be coming out to all music and steel band and so on, and we'll see a wonderful array and display of mass and all that makes our culture great. On the Tobago end, we're going to see the closing ceremony would take place in Pigeon Point, and we're having a beach party. So we're going to bring the athletes from Trinidad to Tobago so we can close off in a major way with a street parade and close it with a beach party at Pigeon Point Beach. Of course, we're all very, very excited. We're thankful to the Port Authority, to Caribbean Airlines, and all the entities that are working together to make this possible. It's quite early in the games to call it a success. We have to wait until the last game is played and the last guests leave the island before we celebrate. So it's about everybody putting their hands together and doing their part, pulling their weight to make this thing a success, to ensure that these children, and I call them children because this is what's different about these games. If it's just adults, you can say, okay, we hope they have a good time, but just children, they have to be monitored, they have to be supervised. As much as you get facilities ready, if these youngsters are not kept safe, secure, properly well supervised, we're going to be in some trouble. So that's why we have over 1,800 volunteers helping us with the logistics and helping us to safeguard these children. And TTPS, you have the departments in THA and in central government working together to ensure that that happens. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, making sure all things come together.
All right, in terms of accommodation, you mentioned transportation, of course, Caribbean Airlines and, of course, the ferry service.
The PTSC.
The PTI, ground transport, sea transport, air transport, everything is in train to ensure that people get to and from the islands swiftly and on time. Let's speak a little bit about that, and accommodation, because we know there are 3 hotels designated just for the athletes here in Tobago. Speak to us about visitor arrival in terms of who from varying countries will be here, obviously, to ensure that their children are okay. Speak to that.
Lovely. So, of course, we have 71 different countries coming into Trinidad and Tobago from 5 different regions. The South Africans came into Tobago yesterday. You have some of the athletes landing in Trinidad, some landing in Tobago, and some of them that require inter-island transportation to get them to where they need to be. And of course, PTSC is helping us on the ground. We've worked out arrangements with the Ministry of Works for PTSC to do some work in taking people around, and Ministry of Education, so that the buses that take children to school will take them to the games to ensure that they can enjoy and experience this wonderful initiative. We have a local organizing committee, which is headed by Douglas Camacho. He's the chairman of SportET, which is the implementation arm of the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. And we brought together key representatives from the different ministries and the Tobago House of Assembly. Of course, on the Tobago end, you had George Leacock heading the Tobago Task Force, and we met mid-weekly actually. We meet again on Wednesday, just making sure everything is smooth, that immigration is doing what it's supposed to do as it relates to the visa waivers, that customs is doing what it's supposed to do as it relates to waiving the excise duties and so on for equipment coming in, because you have bikes and tools and all types of equipment coming in to make this thing possible. Ministry of Communication, Tourism, you saw the Moko Jumbies on display and all the different characters on the display at Piaco Airport yesterday, and I trust that the Tobago House of Assembly is doing the same in Tobago, doing packages so that people would know where to eat, where to go, where to stay, so it's about putting heads in beds. It's about showing our guests a wonderful time so that they can come back again, and showing the world that we have the facilities, we have the warmth and the people and all that's necessary to be a sport tourism hub for the Caribbean region.
Minister, I need you to speak to the members of the public listening right now and emphasize on how historic this moment is for Trinidad and Tobago. And while you're at that, speak to the type of conversations that are taking place outside of Trinidad and Tobago as we count down the days for the Commonwealth Youth Games.
Wow. 4 days to go. This is the first time for the Caribbean region, the first time for Trinidad and Tobago hosting a multi-sport event. We've hosted different events in cricket, for instance, CPL. We've hosted ICC World Championships for youth. For cricket, we've hosted FIFA and CONCACAF events in football. And right now we're hosting the Davis Cup for tennis. We've hosted so many different sporting championships individually, but this is our first time doing a multi-sport event, and it's the first time for the Caribbean region. So this is our opportunity to generate economic activity. The government has sponsored over $15 million of 5,000 room nights across these hotels, 3 hotels in Tobago and about 3 hotels in Trinidad, putting heads in beds, whilst they're there, people need to eat, they need to move around, the clothes have to be had to be washed and so on. So it provides economic activity that will put money in people's hands and help to build small businesses throughout Trinidad and Tobago. It helps us to showcase to the world what we have to offer as we work to make our facilities regional hubs for training and development, and showing the rest of the world that we can in fact host. So this is historical and very important for us as we diversify, talk about that economic diversification, providing opportunities for athletes to showcase their skills also. The first time we heard about Kirani James coming out of Grenada, that was at the Commonwealth Youth Games. And COVID had put quite a damper on sport, and these youngsters are ready to play, ready to compete, ready to win, ready to show the world what they're made of. And that's happening here in Trinidad and Tobago. For the first time, we're including para-athletics to the games, and we have countries sending their para-athletes, and that speaks to inclusion and showing sport for all. And I think most importantly, this helps us to ramp up our sport in schools and sport for youth development initiative as we revitalize, should I say in some cases resuscitate sport in schools, using this as a platform as we close off Commonwealth Youth Games this weekend. Next week we start off the week by welcoming GC Foster coming out of Jamaica to train our different coaches and managers and administrators in sport as it relates to ramping up sport in schools, especially at the secondary and primary level. So it's a work in progress, and one thing makes opportunity or opens a gateway for other things to happen as it relates to promoting sport and sport development of our people, our country, and our economy through sport.
Very good. All right, Minister. We'll take that as your closing. However, you spoke about facility and diversifying, and sports tourism is really at the at the pinnacle of what can contribute to diversifying. There are facilities that need upgrading. Of course, we know what happened to Shaw Park and of course at the grounds there. Other facilities that may need upgrading in the event there are events that you may see that can contribute to our economy in the future. In closing,
other facilities that need refurbishment, of course. The facilities in Tobago are under the remit of the Tobago House of Assembly. Sport development in Tobago is under the remit of the Tobago House of Assembly. The only facility for which I'm responsible in Tobago is the Dwight York Stadium. We help with sporting programs. Of course, I just saw you advertise Kenya Kwatna, sponsored by the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. Jared Titan, we sponsored development programs for them also. The Panthers, the Black Panthers organization, Ball Blasters. We in the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, we sponsor and assist so many sporting organizations and programs in Tobago, but as it relates to the physical facility, that work is primarily under the Tobago House of Assembly. So I'm happy to see facilities being refurbished, and I know that this new administration of the Assembly had made a commitment to refurbishing the facilities throughout Tobago. I'm happy to see the introduction of this beach sport facility. I've supported from day one. I've submitted my approval, and as I said to the Commonwealth Games Federation President, no better time to show environmental preservation and sport development and infrastructure working hand in hand than to develop this facility. And here we are today. So I say kudos to all the stakeholders that work together to make this thing happen, and to the people of Tobago. Of course, there are challenges now, there are teething challenges, but it would all come together. And it's not only about the Commonwealth Youth Games, because we are already talking to the Volleyball Federation about having more beach volleyball and more beach sport games. Other TTFA about having beach football in Tobago, and other countries are looking to Tobago now that we have this facility. All the work wouldn't be done for next week, but afterwards we can do more and more and host
Excellent.
more and more
Excellent,
things
excellent.
towards economic development in
All
Tobago.
right, we look forward to that, and of course the facilities there as far as beach volleyball. We want to thank you, ma'am, Minister of Sports, Mr. Sham.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And,
Thank you, Jamali, and thank you, Brother B. Thank you, Tobago.
All right, and happy
very nice, and
emancipation,
let's
by
get shot. Happy emancipation to you too.